Hey guys, it's Brandy from Brandy Burrow Astrology, back with Ellie Adams from Let's F with Astrology, Saturn Season Astrology, SaturnSeason.com. Yes, hi,
Yes.
Ellie. Welcome
Hi.
back.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. It's what I look forward to all the time is doing our Forensic Astrology videos. And this is a special request, kind of something going on in the news right now. The Titan Submersible Incident. So
yeah,
my phone was blowing up the last few days. People saying, "Hey, have you looked at the astrology? Have you looked at the astrology?" And I'm like, "Don't worry, we'll record an episode about it."
yeah, it's something.
It's crazy. It is, and the astrology is fascinating. If you haven't watched the news in the last week, just to kind of put you up to date. So this was, I guess from what I understand, an experimental submersible. I guess it had been taken on a few test runs.
That's my understanding of it. Though I've read different, but yeah, that's kind of what I've gathered.
Some of the times they went to go down, they've had to come back up. Like it's kind of a weird story, but basically it's a submersible. And on Sunday, June 18th, they actually allowed paid participants to come on the submersible to go down and look at the Titanic remains, which, from what I'm seeing in social media and everyone talking about it, that's a little controversial in itself. Some people feel like you have no business going down there because this is essentially a grave for Titanic victims. They just felt like it was unnecessary. Some believe, these were billionaires on board. They believe, hey, that money could have been used for better things.
Well, yeah, because they paid, was it $250,000 a piece?
Yeah.
Does that happen? Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at that and I think to myself, but that's just my opinion. That is my opinion. People can do whatever they want with their money, but if I had $250,000 to burn like that, I'm not sure I would spend it that way.
Yeah, especially and now they had to sign these waivers that, from what I understand, the risk of death was all over this. Now, I'm a little sympathetic. How many times do we go sign something and like print a small, or I don't know. I think TMZ actually got a hold of the contract, so still haven't looked at it. That might be something to look at, but I don't know how aware they were of how experimental or the risks, but apparently they were made aware, at least by the contract. I don't know.
Yeah. And this submersible, and I could be wrong about this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like one of the other times that it had been down, it had gone down, it had lost contact. This had happened before, like what happened. So I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been really risky. And they'd had problems before. I guess what controlled it was like a $40 Logitech controller that you get off Amazon.
Okay, yes, and that sounds weird as shit. Sounds weird as shit. But I've also read that I think parts of our military use that too, which also seems weird as shit. Yeah, I don't know. Again, don't quote me on that. But I have read that as weird as that sounds, it might not be as uncommon, which that in and of itself seems kind of concerning.
Yeah, it's weird. I think they're just bringing opinions. Yeah,
I'm not laughing. Yeah, it's not funny. I'm not trying to. It's not, but it is. It's so bizarre. The thought of that.
So bizarre. Yeah. And none of us are laughing about this incident by any means. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy. So just to that's kind of what started. And then yesterday on Thursday, June 22nd, I guess debris fields were found, and it was determined, preliminary, I guess, determination that the submersible had imploded and no chance at life after that.
Not that this is a good thing, but if you have to go, I mean, I'm thinking about this
Mhm.
if you have to go underwater like that, at least that's fast.
So fast. So there
Like
was a doctor on CNN talking about this, that implosions happen at about 1,500 miles per hour, that the brain can't even comprehend what's happening before. So
it's just like lights out.
yeah.
Meaning, not that I wanted any of these people to depart or whatever, but if they had to, the thought of being stuck underwater, losing oxygen,
In a
that's
small
terrifying.
container, in a small vessel, yeah, that's
Yes.
suffering. And it was determined that the victims did not suffer.
Yes. Which is at least, I know that their loved ones miss them dearly but at least they know that it was quick.
Right.
It was fast.
Absolutely. So this episode is going to look at the astrology of what the charts look like when it went underwater. It's a forensic astrology case where we're just going to see what the planets in astrology show. So I guess we will start the first chart. So this is when it enters the water, I guess, takeoff, whatever you want to say, when the journey begins at 8 a.m. on Sunday, June 18th. Leo ascendant. What do you see here, Ellie?
Well, I noticed that Pluto right on the descendant. And Aquarius on the cusp of the 7th. And Aquarius energy is so, like, it can be so unpredictable. So and since there's not necessarily a perpetrator here, right? It's more like a cause.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't feel like, I don't think I seeing this, if I were going in a submarine, and knowing what I know about astrology, I would not want to go in.
No, especially with that Pluto.
Yeah.
Like you said, right there, 3 degrees away from the 7th house cusp, which in horary rules means it's in the house, so there's danger ahead of them. And you got Mars. This is a daytime chart. Mars is a malefic here, and it's in the 1st house with the victim. So definitely some danger. Venus being right there by Mars, it's just sad to me because it feels like Venus in Leo, which Leo's very, like, it is risk taking. It's adventure. It's and this is like an adventure journey. It's like there's excitement, yet there's danger right there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it feels even like with the Libra also ruling the 4th house, or on the not ruling, on the cusp of the 4th house, and Venus ruling it. It also makes that danger feel even more pronounced, I guess.
Yeah, the end of the outcome, the end of the end results right there. Yeah, it's not looking good. And then you got Saturn in the 8th house of death. What I find interesting here too, the moon is going to co-rule the victims, and we got a 29-degree moon in Gemini, which is a travel, signature. But you also got, Pluto at 29 degrees. We got the anaretic degree showing up twice here, which is a very intense degree for these planets.
It is. And we just had that new moon, and the square with Neptune in that, and also with that moon also being conjunct, like, I'm going to bring in the galactic anti-center here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a perhaps a blinding, I think, that can happen there. It makes me think that while they may have been made aware of the risk, but they were either blinded to how perhaps bad, perhaps how serious they are or were, maybe even a little delusional about how serious they were. Seems possible. It almost feels a little like the Titanic, with people running around saying God himself could not sink this ship.
Yeah.
And it was fucking made of iron.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels a little, there's some sort of something or another about that.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's almost like a blind spot? Is that what you're saying? Kind of.
Yeah, I think the galactic anticenter can be a blind spot, but it's like a big ass bright star is right in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like covered in actual space dust. This part of the sky is covered in fucking space dust. So there is like it is a little cloudy. It's not the clearest of places.
It's visible, but not clear.
Yes.
Which is interesting because the new moon, is dark. Yes. So it's like, to me, that's like kind of a literal thing here too. That's like, hey, you're not seeing this. There's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you might be being told this, but you're not seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Being that this new moon, and you got Mercury here, visiting this 11th house, which is also naturally or traditionally ruled by Aquarius. It's an Aquarius house on a, standard chart. Just a little bit more hints here of unpredictability and, structures not being solid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting here, before I saw this chart, I was wondering, I was like, is this chart going to have the Gemini ascendant? Because we have multiple victims. It didn't, but that sun, which is a chart ruler, which is the ruler of the victims, is in Gemini.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Sky using what it has at the moment, that's what it feels like,
Well, and another thing about not being seen, that you mentioned the 29-degree moon, the 29-degree Pluto, they're quincunx, which is another not seen.
They're not seeing each other either.
No, it's not. They're not seeing the danger there. They're not seeing it.
So there's a lot of blind spots here. There's a lot of, and I'm not saying this is any fault to these victims. So I don't want anyone
absolutely
to say that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But just knowing, like, hey, there's some hints, or there's, this wasn't like deemed safe necessarily. And, there was, it's sad because it feels preventable.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. Yes. And it is, absolutely no blame to any of these people. It's a tragic accident, a tragic thing what happened to them.
I do trying to think if I should, I don't know if I want to go here. Well, the 7th house, if you want to look at modern rulership of Uranus in that 10th house, 10th house is where we can find like the boss sometimes. The CEO was on board.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if, maybe he knew there were risks. I'm sure,
but maybe, okay, I'll say it so you don't have to. Are you saying like maybe he downplayed the risks, or maybe he took, are you thinking that maybe he downplayed them, or maybe straight out didn't tell them everything?
Here's what I don't like about it. Uranus is in Taurus, in a sign of money. No, now, do I think he thought something would happen? No, I don't. I don't think he would have gone down there himself, if he thought, I think he probably thought, oh, this should work, but he's a smart guy. Like, he went to an Ivy League college. He's like, I believe, some kind of engineer. It feels, okay, I'll say this. It feels like the motivation here is financial.
Yeah. And
it might have been like, hey, let's take some people down here to keep this funded, to keep this
going.
Not, now did I, like I said, I don't think he thought that would happen to them, of course, but it feels a little negligent.
Like maybe he down, not that he thought that anything was going to happen to them, but perhaps maybe he downplayed the risks to as a motivation to make money, essentially. Yeah, because I agree. I don't think that he thought that anything was actually going to happen because he was on it. I mean,
and this might be, some of the blind spots we're seeing in the chart. a lot of that might be involving him too. Like, hey, maybe he should have known that this wasn't 100%, but maybe he's like, I've been down there, it's fine. You know, who knows? And we need some money. Like, I know, I feel kind of bad saying that, but that's what I'm seeing here.
That seems possible to me.
And I mean, no disrespect, you know, sometimes certain positions can make you take more risks.
I'll also, the Uranus part with the money, it almost makes me wonder if maybe money wasn't quite as stable or something, which could have made him be more inclined to,
Yeah, absolutely. Now I do find this Jupiter sitting on the north node opposing the south node kind of interesting in this place too. You know, and I'm not saying this isn't my opinion. It's just kind of like playing with evolutionary astrology, if we kind of want to go into this. And I was talking to a friend about this, who he brought up kind of an interesting, I'm trying to be sensitive about this, but like, if we're looking at like karma and past lives, you know, he was like, I wonder if there was something karmic to this, because, you know, you're going down to the Titanic and then like you lose your life. Like, he was like, I wonder if their past lives were tied to this ship somehow.
Well, I mean, we also have Pluto square in those nodes.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know Pluto's there for a minute, but you know, like that squares, but it is like a wingdinger of a kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. For those into evolutionary astrology, it's definitely something interesting in the chart, and definitely interesting. Like, oh, they're going down to see this ship that had an unfortunate ending, and then they have an unfortunate ending. And then you got like in evolutionary astrology, some karmic things showed up in the chart. It's definitely some stuff to chew on, like, you know.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah. That's the whole thing about past life stuff. Like, you don't have the evidence. It's just kind of like theories. And you do have, I take that back. I think you do get some evidence. Like, I'm so into, oh, his name just left me. I've had a long day. The guy who writes all the past life books, Brian Weiss. He seems to like, he has me sold on the theory. Like, cause he kind of like gets evidence in kind of interesting ways. Hypnosis.
Yeah. I mean, the past life thing, I'm pretty sold on the idea myself. Or something, whether it's past lives, different timelines, whatever. There's some shit. Like, there's some shit. Yes.
And it's definitely interesting to look at in the astrology and kind of think, what does this look like? What was this? But yeah, the nodes in this chart definitely play out in a very interesting way.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay, so that's when they enter the water. I do have the chart for when they lose communication, about an hour and 45 minutes later. There we go. And then it's just come out, I think it was last night, that the Navy actually said they got something on, I don't know what kind of radar, whatever their tracking systems are, that they heard some kind of implosion around this time.
Okay.
Monday, but you know, they couldn't confirm whether that's what happened to them, but they kind of think that maybe that was the time it happened.
Okay.
Not confirmed, but I think it was actually James Cameron was doing interviews, the director of the Titanic. He actually plays, I shouldn't say plays. He dabbles with doing like underwater exploration. I shouldn't even say dabble. I think like he's actually like worked with engineers and has taken many like voyages into oceans and where Titanic is. So he knows a lot about this stuff and has a lot of connections. And he was the one who actually got on the news and said, yeah, the Navy picked this up around this time. So he kind of spilled the beans on that.
I actually read that the whole reason why he created the movie The Titanic was so he could go down to the Titanic.
Oh, really? I believe it.
Because he's been like 33 fucking times or something.
He's been a lot. And he has his own little submarine thing that he takes places.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know much about James Cameron besides, you know, that he's a director. But when he was talking, I was like, this guy has got to be a Leo. And of course I look up his chart and he was born August 16th. He's a total Leo. So makes sense. It shows. But I digress. Back to this chart. So this might have been the actual time that this happened, possibly.
You have the ruler, well, the modern ruler of the 8th and the 8th. Notice that.
Could you repeat that? It kind of drowned out a little bit. What was that?
Oh, sorry. The modern ruler of the 8th and the 8th.
Yeah.
Yep, there.
Water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see that commonly with drownings or death in water. This makes me, that's a good testimony that maybe that is the time it happened.
Also, that Jupiter is very close to that midheaven and that nodal connection. Yeah.
Yeah, and we now have that Mars-Venus
12th.
conjunction. It was in the first house of the chart. It moves into the 12th on this, which, you know, the 12th house is what we see with death as well. And then we got the 4th house actually in Scorpio, the sign of death.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, Uranus is getting towards the top of the chart. You know, it's that highest planet there. I think this is a good testimony if this is when the implosion happens.
I think it probably is, yeah.
And it's interesting, you got the moon that separates now.
It's moved in Cancer.
It's in Cancer now. It's moving away and has moved signs.
Cancer's on the cusp of the 12th.
Yep. Very interesting.
I think it probably was around this time, if not, I mean, maybe shortly before, shortly after, but around here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, you know, it's only an hour, 45-minute difference, and the chart has like the same ascendant, but so much changes, like the positions of the planets and some of the houses, that it's pretty significant. And so
yeah.
If that didn't happen around that time, I wouldn't expect the chart to look like this. You know, I expect it to be a little bit more of the same. And yeah, there's significant changes here.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there definitely are.
Anything else you take away from this?
I can't remember if we talked, I know we talked about Mars, I know we talked about Uranus, but they are squaring. But like, you know, applying, that also feels like, I don't know, not real
Volatile.
safe.
It feels kind of volatile to me. Like,
yes. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you have, you know, Mars can be violence. It can be action, energy oriented. And then you have it making a square, you know, a hard aspect to Uranus, which is unpredictability, breaking free, shakeups. You know, it's common, like, I think you see a lot of Uranus with like explosion or you know, these sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the astrology. Very sad. You know, my heart goes out to these families. I know it to me, it's, and I'm going to just say this will not be popular with everybody, but I'm a Gemini and not everything I say is popular, but it shocks me, like on social media, seeing so many people's reactions to this. There's a lot of insensitivity.
Yeah, the internet is generally an insensitive place, filled with people that would say things on the internet that they would never say in real life.
Right. They would not say it to your face, or yeah, or wouldn't say it in public, or but yeah, my heart just goes out to these families, and you know, I mean, I just feel terrible for them. And you know, and even, you know, I know we were looking at the astrology and we're looking at like the CEO being on there and maybe his part in it. I still feel bad for all of them. Families.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's fucking tragic what happened. Absolutely.
Yeah, no one intended for this shit to happen and didn't think it would happen or they wouldn't have been on there. And yeah, we need to be kind of nice. We need to be nice and send some good vibes to these families for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for looking at this with me, Ellie. And just another example of how forensic astrology works and information you can find from it. Where can everybody find you, Ellie?
You can find me at SaturnSeason.com, at on YouTube at Let's F with Astrology, and on Instagram at Saturn Season Astrology. And Brandy, where can you be found?
Well, since you asked, I can be found at brandyburrowastrology.com and Brandy Burrow Astrology on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So,
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you, Ellie.
Yeah. Always a pleasure. Truly, always a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I always have fun, and we're gonna have some interesting things next week too. So you guys make sure you go to Ellie's channel, because we did another interesting episode on the Georgia.
The Georgia Guidestones, which are I kind of thought, this week doing weird shit like this submarine thing is weird. So Georgia Guidestones getting blown up, that's fucking weird too.
Yeah, it's a good, and those are some crazy charts and a crazy story with it. Go over to her channel and watch that. You will love it. So,
yeah.
I just threw my pen, so I guess it's time to go. Thanks, Ellie.